My name is Renee, and I am 17 years old. The note was waiting for me on the kitchen counter, held down by a cold ceramic mug that still smelled faintly of my father's coffee, as if the message had weight, as if cruelty needed an anchor to stay in place. 3 words were written in thick black ink, pressed so hard into the paper that the letters scarred through to the other side. "Stay out of sight, freak." I remember staring at it longer than I should have, my mind refusing to stitch meaning into something so sharp, so deliberate. The house was quiet in that strange, hollow way that only happens when laughter has recently left a room. A few hours earlier, I had listened to them rush around upstairs, drawers slamming, hurried footsteps, the electric hum of excitement. No one had called my name. No one ever did on days that were supposed to belong to me. I told myself they were planning a surprise, that maybe this year would be different, that maybe I would finally walk into a room where smiles didn't vanish the moment I entered. But the silence had stretched and stretched until hope felt embarrassing. And now there was the note, small and vicious, saying everything they never had to my face. My chest tightened as if the air itself had turned hostile. I didn't cry right away. First came that familiar numbness, the protective frost that forms when pain arrives too quickly. Then came the questions I already knew the answers to. Where did they go? Why today? What did I do wrong this time? The truth was ugly in its simplicity. They had gone to celebrate my younger brother's achievement, some minor victory inflated into a family event, while I was once again edited out like a mistake. My fingers trembled as I picked up the paper, even after years of their sideways glances, their whispered conversations that stopped when I walked into rooms, their habit of treating me like an inconvenience they were forced to tolerate. The words still landed, with fresh brutality, freak, such a small word for such a large wound. I sank into a chair, the wood unforgiving beneath me, and the memories I tried so hard to bury rose uninvited. Birthdays forgotten, school events ignored. My father's distant gaze sliding past me as though I were invisible, my mother's tight smiles that never reached her eyes. They had mastered a special kind of rejection, not loud, not explosive but constant, like a slow leak draining something essential from me. The clock on the wall ticked with exaggerated indifference, each second a reminder that time moved whether you were loved or not. I don't know how long I sat there, clutching that note like evidence of a crime no one else would prosecute. Eventually the tears came, hot and unstoppable, spilling out of me with the force of everything I had swallowed for years. I cried for the girl who kept trying, who kept believing effort could earn affection, who kept searching for warmth in a place that had none. Outside, a car passed, music, thumping, laughter drifting faintly through the window, the world continuing, oblivious. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my hoodie, ashamed of my own grief even in solitude. That was another lesson my family had taught me well. Feelings were weaknesses, needs were burdens, and I was both. Then the doorbell rang. The sound sliced through the silence, abrupt and jarring, and for a moment I froze, my heart stumbling into a new rhythm of confusion and dread. No one ever came for me. No friends dropped by unannounced, no relatives visited without invitation. I hesitated, staring at the front door as though it were something alive. The bell rang again, more insistent this time. My legs felt heavy as I stood, every step toward the entrance weighted by a nameless apprehension. Through the frosted glass, I could make out the blurred outline of a tall figure, still and patient. I opened the door slowly, bracing myself for another disappointment, another reminder of my place in the hierarchy of importance. Instead, I found a man in a charcoal suit, his posture straight, his expression composed in that practiced, professional way that immediately signals bad news or life-altering news, sometimes both. He held a leather folder tucked neatly under one arm. "Renee?" he asked, his voice calm, almost gentle. My name sounded foreign coming from a stranger, spoken without irritation or dismissal. I nodded, unable to form words. He studied me for a brief second, not with judgment, but with something closer to assessment, as though verifying a detail in a file. "I'm sorry to arrive unannounced," he said, "but this matter is time-sensitive." My stomach dropped. Time-sensitive. The phrase echoed ominously in my mind. I thought of my parents, of the empty house, of the note still lying on the kitchen table like a silent accusation. "There are documents you need to review," he continued, extending the folder toward me. My hands shook as I accepted it, the leather cool against my skin. I had no idea, standing there in the doorway with tear-streaked cheeks and a heart, already fractured by 3 cruel words, that my life was about to split into a before and an after, that the loneliness I thought was my entire story was only the opening, chapter of something far more complicated, far more shocking than anything I could have imagined. The man waited until I stepped aside before entering, his polished shoes making almost no sound against the floor, as if he carried the kind of news that demanded reverence. My pulse thundered in my ears while I clutched the leather folder to my chest, my mind racing through worst-case scenarios with terrifying efficiency, lawsuit, debt, some mistake. I didn't know I had made. He introduced himself as Mr. Calloway, a lawyer whose name meant nothing to me, and yet his presence felt heavy with significance. We sat at the dining table where my family had shared countless meals without me, where conversations had flowed around my silence like water around stone. The irony wasn't lost on me. My fingers fumbled with the clasp before finally opening the folder. Inside were papers neatly arranged, dense with legal language that blurred under the weight of my anxiety. "Please take your time," he said, his tone measured, almost sympathetic. I scanned the first page, my eyes snagging on my own name printed in stark, undeniable letters. Renee Walker. Beneath it, phrases began to take shape, their meaning assembling slowly, disbelievingly. Guardianship, transfer, custodial authority. My breath caught. "I don't understand," I whispered, my voice brittle. Mr. Calloway leaned forward slightly, hands folded. "Your godmother filed for emergency guardianship months ago," he explained. "The petition was granted this morning." The words seemed absurd, detached from reality. "My godmother?" I repeated. I barely remembered her, a distant, almost mythical figure from early childhood, someone my parents never spoke of. He nodded. "She provided substantial evidence of neglect and emotional harm. The court ruled in your favor." Favor. The idea that any system, any authority could side with me felt alien. My eyes dropped back to the document, to signatures that made my stomach twist violently. My father's name. My mother's name. Inked, final, unmistakable. "They agreed?" I asked, horror creeping into my chest. Mr. Calloway's pause told me everything before he spoke. "They did not contest. Not contest, as if I were an unwanted item being quietly removed. A strange, dizzying mix of pain and vindication surged through me. They hadn't fought. They hadn't even tried. The note on the counter burned in my memory, its cruelty now reframed as confirmation rather than anomaly. "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked, my thoughts spiraling. "Your godmother is waiting," he replied gently. "She asked me to bring you." Waiting, for me. The concept struck with almost physical force. My entire life had been defined by not being waited for, not being chosen. I stared at the papers again, at the cold legal language that somehow held the promise of escape. Fear wrestled with a fragile, trembling hope. Why would she do this? The question slipped out, raw and unguarded. Mr. Calloway's expression softened in a way that felt startlingly human. "Because," he said quietly, "she cares about what happens to you." The simplicity of it shattered something inside me. No grand speech, no dramatic revelation, just care. A word so ordinary for most people, yet so impossibly rare in my world. I don't remember deciding to stand, only the sudden awareness that I was on my feet, that my life as I knew it was collapsing and reconstructing simultaneously. I moved through the house in a daze, grabbing a backpack, stuffing it with clothes and a few objects that felt like fragments of identity. A worn novel, a sketchbook, a photograph of myself as a child before everything had changed. Each room seemed to watch me with mute indifference. No, voices called after me. No one tried to stop me. Outside, the late afternoon light cast everything in an almost surreal glow. A sleek car idled by the curb, engine humming patiently, and beside it stood a woman whose face stirred. Something deep and distant in my memory. She turned as I approached, her eyes widening. not with judgment or irritation, but with unmistakable emotion. "Renee," she breathed, my name breaking in a way that suggested it mattered. Before I could react, she closed the distance between us and wrapped her arms around me. I stiffened at first, my body unfamiliar with the language of affection, before slowly, hesitantly, melting into the embrace. She held me as though I were something precious, something fiercely protected rather than reluctantly tolerated. Tears welled again, but these felt different, less like collapse, more like release. In that moment, standing on the quiet street with the remnants of my old life behind me, I felt something I barely recognized. Not happiness, not yet, but possibility. The drive away from the house was silent, the familiar neighborhood receding in the side mirror like a chapter finally closing. My godmother spoke softly about practicalities, schools, arrangements, a room prepared for me, yet beneath, every word was a current of warmth, so steady it made my chest ache. For the first time, the future did not appear as an endless extension of the past. It looked uncertain, yes, but also unwritten. And as fear slowly loosened its grip, another feeling took root, fragile but undeniable. I had not been erased. I had been found.